Hey everyone, happy Friday. So, Tara, I have so many conspiracies brewing in me, and we're just going to have to talk about some of them today. I know it's been a while since we did a conspiracy episode, but they're adding up like daily. So, I want to get into all of that. Most of that has to do with Hurricane Helene that caused all of that devastation from Florida all the way to North Carolina, even Tennessee. It was a category 4 with 140-mile-per-hour winds. Um, the death toll, the last time I checked, it was at 178. But just like with the Maui fires, everyone knows the death toll is much higher because there are hundreds of people missing in the mountains. And there's all sorts of reports coming out of people finding, bodies and no one's going to get them. So there is no telling how many people have been lost in this horrible, horrible storm that went through there.
Yeah, and before we get into the conspiracy side of things, I want to go back to right after the hurricane and just point out that once again, the first person that took action with helping the hurricane victims was Trump. It wasn't Biden, it wasn't Kamala, it wasn't Tim Walz, it was Donald Trump. And he personally showed up in one of the devastated areas in Georgia on Monday. He brought several like semi trucks full of relief aid. He was in the crowd, he was connecting with people. And I want to read what he said because this to me is a very real, heartfelt message. He said, quote, "We're going to be with you as long as you need. You're in our prayers, and we pray to God. And throughout these long weeks, the long weeks that lay ahead, you're going to have a lot of work. But the end result is it's going to be good. We just wish so many people weren't so badly hurt. We love you. We love everyone." End quote.
Did you see that viral clip going around of Trump like holding that guy, the old guy? I,
Yes.
I like started crying. It was like this guy, this old man just sees him and starts crying, and he just like hugs him and like
Yeah.
didn't let go. And then he's tretching through like up to his knees in water. This guy
Yeah.
who's had assassination attempts on his life, going
Mhm.
through flooded waters. Like that's what a leader should be doing.
Correct. Now, I want to contrast this to the initial response from President Biden, which I'm not even sure why I'm calling him president anymore. But of course, he was in Delaware on probably like his 500th day of vacation when the hurricane came through. And when he was confronted by a reporter on Monday about the aftermath, he basically lost his shit. He snapped and he said, quote, "I was commanding it. I was on the phone for at least 2 hours yesterday and the day before as well. I command it. It's called a telephone and all my security people," end quote.
Two
Like,
whole
what the
hours.
fuck?
Wow. That's a lot of work
Wow.
for him.
Exactly. And then he said that he was going to do a flyover to survey the damage in North Carolina. And but get this, he said he wasn't going to stop anywhere because, quote, "it's too much for me in terms of interrupting access to help there, to land in Asheville, to survey the damage other than through the air," end quote. Stephanie, it was too much for him. That's what he said. It was too much for me. Like, fuck the people in these devastated areas of the country, the hundreds of people stranded in the mountains. It was too much for Biden. And what about Kamala? Where was Kamala? Partying it up on the campaign trail on the West Coast, but she made sure to put out a statement that she was briefed by phone. Like, this is such blatant hatred and disregard for Americans from the fucking left. Like, these people are unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable. And I wasn't surprised to see Trump there right away. I feel like Kamala and Biden, they'll wait. And then when it looks bad from a PR standpoint, then they'll step in. But no, they're still like making mistake after mistake and showing the American people how truly disgusting they are. Because, for instance, Kamala just did a little press briefing where she announced that the folks who are in dire need of assistance can apply to get $750 from FEMA.
Yes.
750 fucking dollars when you've lost everything. Like, are you kidding? And you have to apply. So, like, this is from the woman who raised $500 million for her campaign in less than a month. And she's telling people who lost their homes, their families, everything they own, they can get $750 if they apply. And like this definitely caught my attention because all over TikTok, I'm seeing people post left and right that they don't see government officials or FEMA tents or anything. And the only way they're getting help is by other citizens that have like traveled there to help. And I guess that's why, because they're not like handing it out. You have to go online and apply. Like the people stuck in the mountains with no power can just go on and apply. Like, are you kidding me? And then you have people posting that their schools raised money for the victims and FEMA came and took the money, took the cash donations that they didn't collect, the schools did, and then left. And yet FEMA's like nowhere to be found in the disaster zone. Um, so then I was listening last night to a clip from Glenn Beck, and he had got together like his other, rich friends, and they had a plane and a bunch of helicopters that they were going to bring there to bring supplies. And so the day he's supposed to head there, he gets a phone call from people on the ground saying, "Oh, guess what? FEMA finally did show up." Well, listen to what he says next.
Having a hard time. Yeah. So I get a phone call from somebody who's on the ground. Is this our Blaze reporter? No, it's not anybody related to me, just somebody I know. He said, Glenn, there's a problem because FEMA now is coming in. Right. And I said, okay. And they finally showed up at 80 hours or days later or whatever it is. Good. That's good, right? Good. Welcome, FEMA. He said, except they're confiscating the food. And I said, what? Excuse me? What? 4 separate people, none of them will allow me to use their names because they're afraid of blowback from the federal government. Mm-hmm. And then they will not be able to help anybody. Mm-hmm. 4 people yesterday had government officials walk in to churches, to schools, whoever is distributing food, okay? This is all privately collected food. And FEMA is walking in and saying, you can't distribute this food anymore. We're taking it and we'll be distributing it. And they said, well, excuse me, this is private food. No, you can't. We know where this needs to be distributed better than you do. We're taking the food. If you would like FEMA to be in your community and help, you will give us the food. Wow. And they're threatening them in the way of, well, get out. That's what I say. Then get out. Yeah. That's what I say. Right.
So I have been hearing this all over TikTok from people on the ground as well, where they're like, yeah, they're keeping it like locked in these storage facilities for people that are in need instead of like handing it out. Probably because people have to go online and apply,
It's like they're probably saving it for the migrants.
Oh, we will get there. Don't even get me started on that. I am telling you, I was like, we could turn this episode into like a series because you know how passionate I got about Maui. This is the same thing. It is the same thing happening, but even like a whole other degree because you add in the migrants on top of it, which we'll get to in a minute. But Don Jr., who I love him, like I just always have to comment on his posts because he says things just so concisely that everyone's thinking. So he posts on social media, $750 for Americans in desperate need, many of whom lost everything, including family. $250 billion spent in Ukraine with a population of 38 million equals a bit more than $6,500 per person in fucking Ukraine. For what? Great point. Great point. Like, this is crazy. And then you have Biden on a video telling reporters that the American people need to help out and donate.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, we have so much extra money right now with inflation. You're sending money to everyone else but Americans, but we should step up and help out, which we are because that's what Americans do. And like, fuck you, Joe Biden. But why is he saying that? Why? Well, Because FEMA is now out of funds. And this comes after over $1 billion was spent by the Biden Harris administration on a FEMA program to help illegal migrants. This is absolutely like insane. I'm going to play a clip from Fox News because they covered this. So it starts out with Mayorkas, um, basically saying, like, yeah, you guys are screwed. We have no money. And then it's going to get into the Attorney General of Florida talking about what this means.
Sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants. Attorney General of the great state of Florida, Ashley Moody, joins me now. AG Moody, why does the Biden-Harris administration always seem to help American taxpayers last?
Good morning, Todd. Yeah, everyone should be waking up this morning outraged by that comment. This is not something that has just happened recently, and Florida's been warning about this since this administration took over. Mayorkas has come in like a virus and infected these what need to be healthy, strong, fundamental programs to ensure the stability and safety of Americans in times of disaster. So you heard, they have taken the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program and over time siphoned off hundreds of millions of dollars into basically making it an illegal immigrant resettlement program. And so when you see these states and cities around the nation declaring emergencies, even blue states, because of what this administration has done, encouraging more and more and more, developing programs to encourage more and more and more people to come here, the government, Biden and Harris, are having to fund that on the backs of the American people. And now, right now, when Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, all of these states are hurting because of this truly natural disaster, not a Biden-Harris made disaster, they're saying we need more money. And of course they need more money because they've been laundering it from the true intended purpose of this fund that Congress set forth.
She
Money
nailed it.
laundering.
They've been laundering it. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
How many times have we talked about money laundering with this administration? Like,
Yep.
it is insane. And how can they do that when Congress, Congress controls the pocketbook? When they say this money is for natural disasters for FEMA, how can they do that? Like, how is that not criminal to then completely reuse $1 billion? We're not talking about a small bit of cash, $1 billion freaking dollars. So it's like, the Biden Harris administration, they will pay the Ukrainians, they will pay illegal migrants, they will pay for women who want late term abortions, they will pay for transgender surgeries for prison inmates. But they don't have enough to help the victims of the hurricane that fucking lost everything.
Yeah.
Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
Yep.
So, Team Trump, if anyone is on TikTok, make sure you're following Team Trump. It's an official account for their campaign, and they are like so on top of things. So like almost immediately, like when I was seeing the videos of Trump there, like in the water, like helping people, they posted a picture of Kamala on Air Force Two with her headphones on, looking, serious, like she's getting some work done. And the post says, quote, "I've just been briefed by FEMA's Deanne Criswell on the developments about the ongoing impacts of Hurricane Helene." And so then Team Trump in the caption, they point out, well, your headphones aren't even plugged into your phone, number one. And number two, that piece of paper you're writing on is blank. There is no writing on it. So clearly, like, it is a staged photo op. And then, of course, like you swipe and they show a picture of Trump on the ground handing out supplies. And it said, vote for a president that actually shows up. Like,
Wait, I have to say something because this made me laugh so hard. So that photo of Kamala where she's like writing on the blank piece of paper that you can zoom in on the photo and literally see there's nothing on it. Well, Aaron sent me this picture where like the top half is her, sitting there writing, and on the bottom, it's a picture of like drawing dicks on a piece of paper like you would do in class in like junior high.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me. She's like sitting there
Yeah.
doodling some dicks. Oh my God. Well, yeah. And it's just like, it's so outrageous. You would think just from a PR standpoint, like she would be doing something like we all know she doesn't care, but you would think just for her own image, she would step up. But no, like you said, she was at a California elite fundraising event. Then she did an interview with these like famous basketball players where once again she talked about growing up in the middle class and it was super cringy, of course. And then there's another viral clip that's going around showing Biden sending $230 million to Ukraine, next to a clip of him walking away from reporters as they're asking about hurricane relief. I mean, this is what you're getting if you vote for Kamala. And it's a small preview. Like this is where they're at and what they do when things get tough. Biden and Harris and Walz, they hide from the public at these lavish elite events while Americans suffer. They never show up when they're truly needed. And it's not like this was just an average hurricane. Like this was historical and
Yeah.
they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I've even heard like it being described as biblical proportions of
Yeah.
damage and destruction. And I was so floored on Wednesday when Mayorkas made the announcement about FEMA not having enough funds. And so where is this billion plus that FEMA set aside for migrants going? Well, if you go on the DHS website, it's all right there. It's called the Shelter and Services Program. And the website says that it, quote, provides funds to state, local, tribal, and nonprofit organizations to support sheltering and other eligible activities, including facility improvements to support non-citizen migrants who have been encountered and released by the Department of Homeland Security, end quote. Like, what the fuck? And according to the Daily Mail, the budget for this program nearly doubled from 363 million last year in 2023 to 650 million this year in fiscal 2024. And the Biden-Harris admin is literally refusing to reallocate these funds to disaster relief for hurricane victims. And I haven't played a clip from Real AF in a while. And my husband actually sent me some stats this morning that I was going to read off on the podcast, but Andy and DJ go through it on their episode and it's fucking like jaw dropping. So I want to play the clip.
Department of Homeland Security announces $380 million in additional funding to communities receiving migrants. FEMA awards $110 million to the Emergency Food and Shelter Program to assist migrants. Department of Homeland Security announces distribution of more than $77 million in congressional funding for communities receiving migrants. New York City to get $104.6 million from FEMA for asylum seekers. Department of Homeland Security announces distribution of more than $12 million in funding. Department of Homeland Security announces $300 million in direct funding to communities receiving migrants and $340 million for a new competitive awards process. Now, don't you worry. We're helping Americans. We're taking care of our own. Kamala Harris chimed in on this. Check this clip out.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
You could see it on her face, how bad she knows that is. You could see it on her face. So $750. Bro, it's disgusting. We have migrants having their EBT cards loaded up with $6,000 to $12,000, receiving free housing, free food, free healthcare, which, by the way, you and I pay for. And now these same people are unwilling to help actual American citizens who are displaced by this hurricane. And literally, we have no idea how many people are dead.
We don't even know how many people are missing. We have no idea because it's so, you would all do yourselves a major service to really dig in to what is going on in the Asheville area and North Carolina area with this hurricane situation. There are people using their own means, their own money, their own fuel, their own time to rescue these people, while just yesterday, 7 days after it happened, there was an approval of some troop activities. All right. But up until yesterday, this has been entirely civilian based. Okay. Now,
Still largely is.
yeah, bro, listen, man. Yesterday I said they almost seems like it's on purpose. Now I'm convinced it's on purpose.
Well,
After seeing them come out and say, we're only going to give them $750. And then Mayorkas saying FEMA doesn't have the money to do it. After they've sent $150 billion overseas to both Ukraine and Israel, and then a number of other amounts in the billions to other countries.
Oh, well, Andy, I got the numbers for you.
Oh, here we go.
Just this year alone.
This is 2024. So if we included 2022, 23, 24, that Ukraine number would be over 100.
Over.
Okay, but I'll read the numbers to you because the audio people can't see this.
Sure.
24 billion to Ukraine, 11.3 billion to Israel, 1.95 billion to Ethiopia, 1.6 billion to Jordan, 1.4 billion to Egypt, 1.1 billion to Afghanistan, 1.1 billion to Somalia, 1 billion to Yemen, 987 million to Congo, 896 million to Syria, $9,000 per illegal immigrant that has entered the U.S. And the American citizens who lost everything, their homes, their towns, their communities, their loved ones, $750 per person. And by the way, you paid for all of that. Does that sound like the people that you want representing you? Does that sound like freedom when we are working until July and August to pay the federal government and our tax revenue? And then they take the revenue and spend it all over the world and funnel half of it back to themselves? Bro, we are tax slaves.
Such a good clip. 1.4 billion to Afghanistan, aka the Taliban, because they now took over Afghanistan. And you know what I was thinking when he was reading off the numbers for the migrants? What have we heard from all these Democrats? Like, oh, well, we have to help them. It's not like we can just leave them on the street. That would be inhumane. They're leaving people in the mountains with no food, no water, no medication. Isn't that inhumane? This is it's such a double standard. And anyone at this point that's not awake is just an idiot, or they're just refusing to see the truth. And, like he said, at first he was like, oh, I don't know. Now he's like, I know this is purposeful. Same thing. When we were going to record this episode earlier in the week, I was like, oh, I don't know. Should we get into the conspiracy stuff? And now I'm like, absolutely, because this was fucking intentional.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to bring up a few other ways they could be paying for this, because there's all these other unspent appropriated funds that the Biden-Harris admin has allocated for their climate, energy, and infrastructure bills that have gone nowhere, right? So earlier this week, The Blaze reported that according to Politico, less than 17% of the $1.1 trillion set aside for these failed programs has been spent as of April, which would mean there's approximately $900 billion remaining. But according to Biden's climate czar, Ali Zaidi, he did an interview with Politico last week and said, quote, the Biden-Harris administration is focused on sprinting through the next few months with a relentless focus on execution. We're implementing the largest climate investment in world history and pursuing a regulatory agency that has secured public health and environmental gains, end quote. And again, this was last week, okay, right at the same time of the hurricane. And apparently there's still $92 billion in unspent COVID funds. And I didn't know that. And let's not forget the money that Biden has pledged to send to Ukraine before he leaves office, right? So, yesterday, Rep. Matt Rosendale said that Congress can absolutely reallocate the funds meant for Ukraine to FEMA for hurricane relief, but the government is refusing to do so. And he made a very clear point, and he said, quote, "The government only does things fast when they choose to do so," end quote. And it's very clear to me that the Biden Harris admin is choosing everybody over Americans. You have entire communities and towns that have been decimated throughout our country. Hundreds of Americans are dead, missing, or abandoned, and our government is focused on relentless spending for climate change initiatives, taking care of illegal migrants, and supporting a foreign country in an unwinnable war. Like, it's fucking criminal.
It's absolutely criminal. And now they're already saying with hurricanes that they know are coming next, there's going to be no money. Like, it is outrageous, outrageous. And then you have in North Carolina, these volunteers that are showing up. People are bringing helicopters, like private helicopters, because that's the only way to get to these people in the mountains because the roads are gone. And they're saying that they are being threatened from these government authorities. They're being threatened of arrest if they attempt to do search and rescue. Like, that is insane. There's a viral post going around from Kelly DNP. She's a functional and integrative doctor. And she says in the post, quote, "We have medical teams trying to access Burnsville and Black Mountain. Authorities are threatening arrests. I'm going to keep this short and simple. Something is very wrong here." And in the caption, or I'm sorry, in the comments, so many people were like, happening here, like every single area that's been affected. Anyone that tries to get near to help or bring supplies are being threatened. And normally I wouldn't just like go off of what I see on TikTok. Like, I'll try to find, multiple accounts or back it up in some way because I know there's a lot of like random stuff that goes around, but I'm talking about like hundreds and hundreds of videos that I have seen just in the past like 24 or 48 hours of people on the ground saying this, like people actually there who went and tried to help and are being turned away. And if they stay, they're going to be arrested. And I finally found a local news station that corroborated like what I've been hearing from all these hundreds of videos. And they're interviewing a rescue worker. And you're not going to believe what he has to say. So just to give like a little bit of background, this guy has his own helicopter. He was rescuing people. He couldn't fit everyone in the helicopter, so he was going back and forth, bringing like 1-2 people at a time. And before he could go back and get more people, including his son, who stayed behind like with the other people, he was stopped by authorities and listened to what was said.
Conversation and then blocking the road off, I was greeted by the at that time I didn't know, but Lake Lure fire chief or assistant chief maybe, and he shut down the whole operation. So at that point, I felt like the conversation wasn't going any further. And again, he asked me to leave, and I said, "Hey, I have no problem getting out of your area. If that's what you want us to do, we'll leave, no issue." At that point, I asked him, what was the reason I had to leave them there? And he said, "Again, you're interfering with my operation. I just need you to get out of the area." I said, "Sir, I don't know where you were trained at, but I know how my training is, and I'm not going to leave personnel behind. I'm going back to get my co-pilot." He said, "If you turn around and go back up the mountain, you're going to be arrested." I said, "Well, sir, I'm going back to get my co-pilot. I don't know what to tell you." And he said, I'm letting you know." And at that point, he waved for 2 law enforcement officers to come over and told me that again, if I go back up the mountain, I would be arrested.
He flew the 3-minute trip back, picked up his son, and left the woman's husband behind.
I'm sure he was flooded with emotions and trying to rescue other people. And I just felt that it was best at the time to leave. So I did follow his instructions, and I had a conversation with the female victim before I left, apologizing and explaining. She was standing there. She heard the whole conversation, and they were both very, very surprised, very upset. The husband, as I was leaving off of the side of the mountain, at that point, separated from his wife, he was upset. I can only imagine.
Sidham and his nearly 1,400 flight hours turned his chopper around and headed back to South Carolina, passing people waiting for help along the way.
As I was actually leaving to go back to get my son, the original chief or captain that I spoke to, his crew and himself, they came back over and said, "Hey man, we can't tell you to go get the victim. We can't even ask you to go get the victim, but we can tell you if you come back with the victim, we'll have you a designated landing spot, and they won't. We'll make sure they don't come over here."
So there was no flight restriction when you went in?
No flight restriction when I went in. It went in place 20 or 30 minutes after the confrontation with Mr.
You feel like that was coincidental, or do you think that was because of what happened?
I don't think it can be coincidental when there has not been one in place the day before doing rescue operations, the night of, the morning of, that took place after our altercation.
That is outrageous that you have someone who is rescuing people who are literally stranded. I mean, stranded. There is no way out of these mountains. The roads are washed away. And they're telling him, you're going to be arrested if you go rescue that person.
I am floored. Like, I don't know at this point how there hasn't been like a fucking mutiny in this country
Yeah.
against our government. I mean,
we all need to like quit paying our taxes and saying, fuck you, we're not giving money when you're not helping the American people. And it's heart-wrenching. I'm watching the guys that are doing the rescue, or up until they were threatened with arrest. They're posting videos. Like one guy was holding a mirror, and they were like, the only way we saw him was he had a mirror that reflected the sun, and they were able to rescue this guy. And I mean, they're up there with nothing, no water, no food, no medicine. You know, they're seeing bodies everywhere. Like, could you imagine? And it's a week in. Like, where's our military? Like, where it's just insane. And so I want to play one more clip because there's another guy. Now, this guy's been there like since day one. He's been doing these helicopter rescues, and he has a lot to say about it. So listen to his account.
A matter of life and death for the people of North Carolina. So my name is Jonathan Howard. I'm a member of the Florida State Guard Special Missions Unit. I'm also up here with Aerial Recovery, a nonprofit. I came up here on Sunday with Aerial Recovery before we even got activated. We flew up here and then we got activated, which is great. I have my team up here working as well. Here's the problem. I'm going to tell you everything that's happening from the ground, what I'm actually seeing, because what they're telling you is complete bullshit on the news, and these politicians don't have the fucking flu and they're lying. And I'll say this now, I'll say it at the end of the video. The only thing I need from this video is helicopters. If I have helicopters, I can save lives. Without helicopters, I can't reach these people. It doesn't matter how many chainsaws and trucks I got, I can't get to them. They're 10 miles in, 20 miles, 40 miles in the mountains. There's no way to get with them or even communicate with them. I am literally flying around in a civilian helicopter looking for SOS messages carved in the mud or painted on the ground, and we're dropping down and saving them. What got me fired up about this was yesterday, me and my team did the rescue of that 11-day-old baby. And all these government officials and social media, they're showing that video, that pictures and video of that rescue, and claiming that like they have some like government help with that. And I mean, even USA, I think it was USA Today, wrote an article about it saying it was a Florida National Guard that went and got it, like with a helicopter. No, it was me, my buddy Charlie, and a civilian named Zeb with his own personal helicopter out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Like without that civilian, that baby would be dead. And the old lady we went and rescued after that, she'd be dead too because she had 1 day left of oxygen. No one was going to go get them. I will tell you, when we go up in the air, I probably see 40 civilian helicopters. I might see 2 Blackhawks, National Guard, military, whatever they are. That's it. No one's out there doing rescues. I have my entire team up here from Florida right now, and they have no ability to go rescue these people other than what they can drive to. And the people that are in dire need, they're out in the mountains. They are completely cut off. Now, I will say, I spoke to my congresswoman down in Florida, and she's a badass. And she made a bunch of phone calls, and now we got 2 contracted 60s coming up here tomorrow, which is great. I love that. But like, I still don't understand why we don't have more helicopters. Like, we'll get a lot of work done with that, but there's no military. No one's doing nothing. It blows my mind. And they're not even allowing people to see what's really going on. One of our friends yesterday, they were actually escorting CNN down to Lake Lure. And they wouldn't even let CNN, the sheriff department would not let them go videotape the bad areas, how destructive it is. I don't know why they don't want to show you all that, but I mean, it is bad. I should also say, when I flew here on Sunday, they actually stopped us from going in, the sheriff department. And it was because of a bunch of politics that they were claiming was the Speaker of the House of North Carolina that was preventing us from even going in and trying to kick us out, which I have clarified today with North Carolina politicians that reached out to me, good on them. And they were like, that's complete bullshit. Speaker of the House has nothing. He wants you guys there. But this is the kind of political BS that is happening here right now. Like, everyone's trying to be in charge without taking any type of action. Nobody wants to coordinate with anybody. Everybody wants to pretend like they're being the hero while these people are literally fucking dying in the mountains. And these people, like I'm saying, these people are limited medication. They're running out of oxygen, and there's no one going to get them. The most effective way I have found to go find these people is by getting in a helicopter and flying down the rivers and roads and looking for SOS messages or people waving us down. And then we drop down and get them. We have all these people here. We have law enforcement. We have State Guard, National Guard. They have no way to go get these people. Yesterday, when I was at the Asheville airport refueling, which, by the way, the civilian is paying all this out of his own pocket. He's not even looking for a reimbursement. I think we did 4 refuelings yesterday. And that was like just in half a day's work. We're in Asheville, and I saw 2 Air Force helicopter 60s. And I knew they were PJs, just looking at them. And I went up to them, like, hey, guys, like, what are y'all doing? And like, this is what you need to be doing. This is how I'm finding people. And they're like, we can't go. We're waiting on Title 10 orders. And I'm like, what? They can't get any authority. There's military helicopters all over here sitting on the ground, and they can't do nothing. Even my JSOC boys in Fayetteville, they can't get orders to come out here.
So if that's not intentional, I don't know what is. You know what it reminds me of? Afghanistan, where, our government, we're not going to go retrieve people, but private citizens can. It's
right.
mind
Except
blowing.
they're not even letting private citizens do it.
Right. And remember with the whole Maui thing, they were doing the same thing where if people tried to go anywhere near it, they were threatening arrest, saying, oh, it's too dangerous for you. And like now they're doing the same thing. It one time, okay, 2 times, it's not a coincidence. Like this is intentional.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And like, what is the excuse that we're getting from our government? On Wednesday, what's his name? Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, he basically said that he announced flight restrictions anywhere near the rescue and recovery efforts, and his reasoning was for safety issues that have come up. And he said, quote, for example, temporary flight restrictions to make sure the airspace is clear for any flights or drone activity that might be involved in helping to allow emergency responders to do their jobs, end quote. But clearly they're not even doing their job. And then I read this article in The Blaze that was talking about this guy named Tim Kennedy, who's the co-founder of Save Our Allies. And he did an interview with Fox Business, and he was saying, yeah, FEMA's there, like they're on the ground, but they're not allowing any non-FEMA rescue efforts. And he said he tried to put some people that he rescued, or some rescued people, in a hotel earlier this week, but there was no room. Why? Because federal employees have booked all the hotel rooms. So all these people that have been displaced from their homes and have nowhere to go, we have fucking federal employees in the hotels instead. Like, it's fucking insane.
My blood is boiling. It's boiling. And, you know, there is like some people that you see where it's like, okay, this shows you like to have faith in humanity still. Last night, I can't tell you how many videos I saw of these guys, and I can only describe them as like mountain men, you know, like they had like the big beards and everything. They had like freaking 20 donkeys like lined up like a train, just piled with supplies. And they're like, if they're not going to rescue people, we will walk up the mountain and bring supplies so they don't die while they're waiting to be rescued. Like, thank God for these people. They're risking their life because they're walking up a mountain that's like been decimated when, like this guy said, there's Black Hawk helicopters just sitting there, not being put to use.
American citizens are helping American citizens, and the government is doing fucking nothing to help American citizens.
Yeah. So up until this point, this is all like 100% factual, right? We didn't even get into the conspiracy part yet, but there are like multiple conspiracies that, I mean, we don't believe in coincidences. These aren't coincidences. Like there's too many of them. So first of all, let's just start with like the North Carolina mountains isn't really what you think of when you hear like hurricane. You think of coastal towns, but nothing about this hurricane was normal. From the government response to the way that it kept up intensity, like so far inland. Usually when it hits land, it starts to fizzle out and it will do damage. But like, as we said earlier, this is historical. Like people are saying biblical flooding. And so a lot of people are questioning, was this even nature or was this something like HARP? And I'll get into HARP in a minute. But the first red flag was that an Asheville, North Carolina equitable, affordable housing development plan was just published on September 13th. So what is that? Like a couple weeks before the hurricane hits. That sent chills down my spine because that is the same thing we saw in Maui a couple of weeks before the fires. Yeah. How is that a coincidence? Like crazy. So that like freaked me out. I'm like, that's weird, but maybe it is a coincidence. Okay, well, is it also a coincidence that this exact region of North Carolina has the largest amount of pure quartz in the world? And that's what's needed for semiconductors, solar panels, fiber optic cables, the chips that go into missiles and other military weapons. And according to Yahoo News, this is going to cause a global supply chain issue. And the article cited Ed Conway in his 2023 book that said, quote, Material World, or the book is called Material World, and it says, quote, it is rare, unheard of almost, for a single site to control the global supply of a crucial material. Yet, if you want to get high purity quartz, the kind you need to make those crucibles without which you can't make silicone wafers, it has to come from spruce pine, end quote. Spruce pines in North Carolina. Then the Washington Post said that U.S. officials have warned that the island of Taiwan is a bottleneck in the semiconductor supply chain. So they've pushed for the reshoring of chip manufacturing in the United States to avoid being overly reliant on East Asia for these critical components. But this part of North Carolina that was hit is also where there are plans to expand lithium mining, another important resource used for technology. So there are plans to expand production with both quartz and lithium in this particular area that just so happened to be hit by the hurricane. Now, this is freaking crazy, okay? I found an article. This is from June 14th of this year. It was from a local paper called The Herald, and it read, quote, Albemarle, I don't know if I'm saying that right, unveiled its site plans for nearly 1,200 acres Kings Mountain lithium mine in Cleveland County, about 30 miles west of Charlotte. The company has not said how much the massive project will cost, but projects like this can cost hundreds of millions of dollars, end quote. And the article went on to talk about how the people who live in those small towns have been going to these meetings, voicing their concerns about the development, saying they don't want these big businesses to come in and take over and expand. And so they were getting a lot of pushback from the people, the same people who now have lost their homes and everything else. And guess when they submitted the state and federal permits for this redevelopment? September 24th, 2 days before the hurricane hit. Is that just another coincidence? Like, again, this is giving me the same creepy vibes as Maui, the same stuff happening. And they had huge, development plans for a smart city in Maui right before the fires wiped out the entire thing. And then also remember when we talked about East Palestine and we were saying how like the EPA had changed their rules where now if land is deemed like unsuitable or dangerous or whatever, they can just take it away. Like these people can't go rebuild their homes on that land that they owned.
Yeah, let me add a little bit more to this because just last week, part of the Harris Walls plan that was released to the public was a paper about how they want to establish a national reserve of critical minerals like cobalt, lithium, and nickel as part of the DOE's reindustrialization strategy for green energy production. And what else just happened this week? Last week, the DOE just gave $100 million to a company called Forge Nano. And this is a Colorado-based lithium iron battery maker that's expanding their factory where? In Morrisville, North Carolina. So is this a coincidence too? Like, it would not surprise me if all of this was connected.
And wasn't it a couple months ago where we were talking about, I don't remember if it was flooding or a severe drought, but it was somewhere, I think Idaho or Utah, and the farmlands weren't getting the water that they needed. And
Yeah.
it was for like a new cobalt mining,
Mhm.
and like the water was gone. Like, this is jaw dropping. And now this whole area is, cleared out, ready
Yeah.
for them to expand and do whatever they want to do. Like, is
How
that just a
convenient.
coincidence? I mean,
Yeah.
we have to ask at this point, after everything we just talked about, this doesn't seem very far-fetched. And like, so let's just say hypothetically, let's just say it was HARP. And I'm just saying HARP, but like, I'm sure every country has its own version of HARP. I'm sure there's all kinds of like man-made weather manipulation, but we're just going to say HARP because that's what we're familiar with. So is it even possible? Like, is this something, technology that we have available? Well, I know we did a deep dive a while back on HARP, but I just want to give a quick recap of it. So HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and it uses an ionospheric sounding device and high power radio frequency transmitter to excite parts of the ionosphere. So knowing that, I want to point out that the Schumann resonance, which is known as like the Earth's vibrational tone, it has been off the charts lately, like off the charts, something we've never seen on radar. And Schumann resonances are global electromagnetic resonances that are generated and excited by lightning discharges in the cavity formed by the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Interesting. Kind of makes you think, what is HARP doing in the ionosphere that's exciting the Schumann resonance, right? So, anyhow, like a lot of people long before the hurricane have been saying, HARP, HARP, it's HARP. Like, this is why the Schumann resonance keeps spiking at levels we've never seen. So there's all these conspiracies around HARP, and there have been whistleblowers throughout the years claiming that HARP can actually manipulate the weather and that they have caused massive earthquakes and hurricanes. And it may sound, silly for anyone that's not familiar with it, but it's not. Like, there are numerous hurricane and storm patents. Anyone that's questioning it, you can literally go and Google it. I read a bunch of patents the other day. Just Google hurricane patent, weather modification patent. There are a ton of them. And the one that I looked up talks about how, quote, the sound waves are generated at a frequency to affect the formation of the weather system in a manner to disrupt, enhance, or direct the formation. So basically, what this means is like a sound wave can take a storm and turn it into a massive hurricane, for example. Okay, that's what it means. Remember a while back when I was telling you about that big blob that everyone was talking about that was showing up on radar, and it was that company in the Czech Republic or whatever that has the radar. So that was off the coast of Antarctica. Well, I've been following it for months, and it pops up like every few weeks. We'll see it. And I started following this woman on TikTok. It's an account called Ham Radio. And she's this like radio expert. And she keeps saying how this blob is sound waves. And it's not like some big alien or something. It is sound waves that's causing this massive disruption in the ocean. And there's boats that will be like right in that area and they see nothing. And she's like, well, they're not seeing anything because it's these sound waves underwater. So anyhow, where this blob is generating off the coast of Antarctica, there is an island. It's called Bouvet Island. And guess what? Google Maps has covered it up. So you can't see it just like you can see anything else in the world. They have purposely covered it up. So people are saying that this is a research facility that could be the source of these sound waves, maybe HARP producing it, just because they do stuff like that. And so that would make sense as to why the hurricane became so powerful because it's originating in the same area. And then you have these sound waves, these frequencies that basically take a storm and just intensify it. And that would explain why there's like biblical flooding and why it's historical. So, it's just like hypothetical conspiracy stuff, right? Well, what are the odds that something epic happened off the coast of Greenland? And this is where there's a HARP facility nearby in Norway. And I'm going to tie the two things together. So just stick with me for a second. In a Greenland fjord, there was a mega tsunami that was over 650 feet tall. And it caused such a ripple that the entire earth vibrated for 9 days. And no one has probably heard about this because the only place they're talking about it is in like scientific journals and magazines. Well, the official story they put out is that climate change caused this because climate change caused a mountain to collapse in the Dixon Fjord, which caused a massive tsunami. But since it happened in this small fjord, the tsunami like basically just rang like a bell in between these blocks of ice, which created such a powerful force that the entire earth experienced seismic vibrations that were picked up on radars globally. That's the official story, climate change. I call bullshit. Earth.com says, quote, to solve this mystery, 68 scientists from 40 institutions across 15 countries collaborated, and they say it was climate change. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, it's unbelievable that people buy this stuff. So my conspiracy theory is that the HARP facility, which is right there, right next to Greenland, it's in Norway. They were using their sound waves, and that's what triggered the tsunami and caused the earth to experience these seismic vibrations for 9 days. And if this can cause the entire earth to rattle for 9 days, it can certainly cause a hurricane. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the whole reason I bring it up is like, if you have a seismic event that caused 650-foot waves, makes the earth vibrate, then we have the biggest storm surge ever recorded in history with this hurricane. How can we just say like, oh, it's all coincidence, it's all just climate change? Like, there is something going on here. All these areas where HARP is, there's weird shit happening.
Yeah, you know what's weird? Like, I didn't really make this connection until you brought up the HARP theory, but I'm wondering if any of this is related to like all the recent weather that devastated Central Europe. Because it was literally 2 weeks ago. It was the week before Hurricane Helene hit, and there was a storm in Central Europe. It was called Cyclone Boris, and it resulted in record rainfall, massive flooding. Over 200 rivers overflowed. Multiple cities and towns were completely submerged. Like, including places here in the Czech Republic, in Poland, Germany, Romania, Austria, Italy. It was a really big deal here. And like in the Czech Republic alone, it was the worst flooding in the last 30 years. And rain in some areas like exceeded 20 inches in just a couple of days. Thousands of people were evacuated. I think like 5 people here died, 10,000 people were displaced. And it impacted the city I live in, and the Moravia region was one of the hardest hit. But like you with Hurricane Helene, the area I live in wasn't in the direct path of the floodwaters. So like we didn't have any major problems, just some downed tree branches and stuff. But I've seen the pictures and the videos, and it's like just it is massive destructive flooding. And of course, this was all blamed on climate change, right? Like that's the narrative for everything. All of these weather disasters are climate change. But like, I don't believe that's true. And now you have me wondering if the timing of this cyclone Boris is related to experiments that are going on at HARP or wherever, because the timing of all this is just too coincidental. And again, we don't believe in coincidences, especially ones this fucking big.
Well, and I didn't even take into account until now the timing of what you were saying earlier about Harris trying to push this climate thing through. They're aggressively putting all these climate change things in place in the next few months. Oh, well, how great that they have all of these natural disasters that they can blame on climate change. Like the timing is a little weird, And that's not the only weird thing that's going on now. There are 2 moons until November 25th. Did you know that? That there's 2 moons in the
Oh.
sky? Yeah.
Oh, and I'm into all this moon stuff, and I had no idea.
Yeah, well, it's not an actual moon. I mean, I don't really know, whatever. Like, it's an asteroid called 2024 PT5, and it's gotten close enough to be pulled in by our gravity. And so now it's like just hanging out there, but they say it's going to be gone on November 25th. And like, I think it's so weird that we've only ever had one moon forever and ever. Like, even ancient scripts show one moon. Now there's 2, and like, no one's making a big deal about it. No one's really talking about it. That's weird to me. I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know we should be alarmed when an asteroid gets that close to Earth. Okay. And like, if it's an asteroid, why are they calling it a moon? Like, does it have similar effects? Because we know that the moon causes tides in the ocean. So like, could the second moon be causing more intensity? Well, it just so happens I came across an article from Discovery Magazine in 2023, and they actually wrote an article about how, like, if we had 2 moons, it would significantly impact life on Earth in multiple ways. And the first was that it would cause significantly bigger tides. And then moonlight and eclipses would also increase, which is interesting because we just had a lunar and solar eclipse, and lunar cycles and calendars would change. Like, why is no one talking about this? We have 2 moons. Moons control the tides. We just had a hurricane. Like, I think it's weird that no one is really aware that there are 2 moons in the sky right now. So I figured I'd throw that in.
They'll probably blame that on climate change too.
Yeah. Climate change drew this asteroid into our gravity.
Atmosphere,
whatever.
Yeah.
And so on that, real quick, because something I just found out last night, there's also a solar flare. I forget what they call it, but it's like the biggest solar flare, and it is directed at Earth. We're going to feel the impacts of it this weekend. We don't know what that means, but it could wipe out all communication and internet, by the way. So that's just something else we're not really hearing about, but it's there and it's happening. So anyhow, I want to end on something that I saw on Instagram, and I thought it was just a really good reminder. Because regardless of conspiracies, Hurricane Helene was a great reminder of why we should not be switching everything to electric. It's a horrible idea. And so this post said, you know what helped me during Hurricane Helene? A gas-powered stove, a gas-powered water heater, a gas-powered car and chainsaw. You know what was worthless during Hurricane Helene? Electric stoves, electric chainsaws, electric water heaters, and electric cars. And in fact, they were dangerous because we had so many warnings here in Florida on the local news and insurance companies calling and saying that because of the flooding, Teslas were starting massive fires in people's garages. And I saw a video of this. It was insane. Like, it just started on fire. Like, within minutes, the whole house is burnt down. And so when the power is out, you obviously can't charge them anyways and use anything electric. And so, like, this Green New Deal that Biden and Harris call the infrastructure package that they, passed, it set aside $65 billion for broadband internet. And do you know that not a single person has been connected to the internet because of it? Not a single person. Where did the $65 billion go? We don't know. Maybe it went to the illegals. I'm not sure. But not to worry, because Trump came to the rescue and he got Elon Musk to let the people affected by the hurricane use Starlink. So again, like, we had money for Starlink. They decided they didn't want to work with Elon Musk. So Trump had to come in and make it happen because Biden and Harris refused. And then last is a question that I've seen over and over and over again on social media. With 4 red states being wiped out by the hurricane, like with no power, no postal service, what does this mean for voting on November 5th? Like, are the people in the affected areas even going to be able to cast their vote? They're likely not even thinking about it because they're just trying to survive right now. And that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this episode should be making everyone think. Like, if you haven't thought about how fucked up and strangely, quote, coincidental all of this shit is, like, you need to open your eyes a little bit wider. There is some intentional nefarious shit going on here, and we have said this for what, the past year and a half, I don't know. The closer we get to the election, the more weird shit's gonna happen, and it looks like natural disasters, but I don't know. I don't think this is all natural.
And anyone that's still considering voting for Kamala Harris after the way she has acted and seeing that they are not helping these people in need, you need to get your head freaking examined if you're still thinking that that's a good option. So, wow. Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be more episodes to come because just like Maui, there's going to be a lot more uncovered and a lot of people still need to be rescued. So we'll keep everyone updated on the latest. And hopefully everyone can have a good weekend after all the craziness and go look in the sky because due to this solar flare, there's going to be these auroras everywhere. Funny because that's what HARP does is work with like these auroras. So go look in the sky and check that out. And we'll see you back here on Monday. Thanks for tuning in.